Hi everybody, it's Dan Stolberger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East update. It is Thursday, December 11th, and when the sun sets tonight, it is the first day of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah, you all. As we normally do, we jump into what we call our news bites. And just a reminder that there is a PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this presentation that's filled with photos of all the different articles that we cover. So make sure you grab that as you go along with this YouTube. Okay, news bites. Senior Democratic members of the U.S. House of Representatives are backing President-elect Joe Biden's plan to, are you ready? Re-enter the Iranian nuclear deal without preconditions. Concurrently, Tehran on Wednesday announced that it was ready to return to full compliance. I wonder if, fingers are crossed, with the 2015 multilateral nuclear accord if other parties honor their commitments. Oh, fool me once, you know that little phrase, right? I can't even believe that we're even thinking about this. Well, it gets worse. Russian ambassador to Israel's ambassador, Anatoly Viktorov, on Wednesday was summoned to the foreign ministry following an interview with the Jerusalem Post in which he claimed that Israel, not Iran, is the problem in the Middle East. Again, as we remember the words of Jesus when he said concerning the end times, watch and pray and don't be deceived. And we know that the power players at the end are going to be Russia, and to see Russia taking this stance at this time is concerning. On the positive side, in our news bites, Israel and Morocco have agreed to reestablish diplomatic relationships. Morocco will have their embassy in in Jerusalem. And President Donald Trump made this announcement, making this the fourth Arab-Israeli agreement in the last 4 months. Well, let's jump into our major articles this week. The vaccine has arrived in Israel. Netanyahu announced on Wednesday that Israel will begin vaccinating the public against COVID on December 27th, making it one of the first countries in the world to inoculate its citizens. He says, I believe in this vaccine. He goes on to say, and I'm going to be the first to receive this vaccine just to encourage our public. And then he goes on to actually say, we're bringing an end to this virus. As you may or may not know, both Canadian authorities on Wednesday, they've also approved, this is the Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, and that already has been approved by Bahrain as well as the UK, and officials are expecting the US to approve within days. Once again, we'll hold our breath and take a look and see if there are any complications to this vaccine. Well, I find it interesting that, the effects of COVID go far beyond the economic issues that we may face with this. We know the impact that it has just on our mental condition, the sense of us being despondent and discouraged and depressed and oppressed and isolated. It's starting to render its effects. And there's an article out of Israel that says this pandemic is plunging huge number of Israelis into depression and anxiety. A recent major study has found revealing that young adults are surprisingly taking the biggest hits. Just as a side note here, we'll be recording a message for Hanukkah coming up entitled Should Christians Celebrate Hanukkah? But I just have to stick this in here. I don't think it's a coincidence that Hanukkah falls on, at least on the Jewish calendar, the darkest time of the year. And Hanukkah is known as the Festival of Lights. And it's important in the midst of this current climate that we hold on to hope and that we illuminate the darkness with light. And fellow believers, Jesus said, we're children of the light. Let your light so shine before others that they may come to know him. So I want to encourage you in these dark days in which we're living, not to retreat, but to be bold. Talk to your friends about Jesus. Hey, light the Hanukkah candles. Okay, back to the major reports for this week. The nukes of Iran. The New York Times reported on Wednesday that Iran has made good on its promise to rebuild its main nuclear facility. The enrichment facility that was destroyed in July. Again, the Iranians said it was an act of sabotage, of course, blaming the Israelis. Israelis are shrugging their shoulders. But the reality is that already at this time, Iran is beginning construction of a new site near Natanz, the original one. And once again, it seems like regardless of what Biden may say and those representatives, that Iran is going full steam ahead, not to develop nuclear weapons for peaceful purposes, but like they've said before, to wipe Israel off the face of the map. So again, we've talked about this in the past. There is a red line. These assassinations that have been taking place are no coincidences. Israel will be and is very involved, and I dare say Trump is as well. We have our B-1 bombers in the Middle East right now, flying sorties, I guess you would say, over the Iranian borders. You think we're making a statement? I believe we are. And then let's just talk about Trump's accomplishments in Israel. It's the anniversary, and recognizing Jerusalem, President Trump has sent a clear message to the world that under his administration, and I hope and pray future administrations as well, that the United States stands unflinchingly with its allies, its bases, its foreign policy on truth, and not on wishful thinking or fantasy. The president acknowledged that the 3,000-year-old history of Jerusalem and its centrality to the Jewish people. The Jewish Ambassador Act of 1995 is an overwhelming statement of the support that the United States has with Israel. Bibi's gone on to say that in the Knesset itself, that he's going to post under the proclamation of Truman about the Jewish state, the proclamation from Trump that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital, the eternal capital of Israel. The Washington Post, again, you can understand as we go through these articles the causes for concern. This is Bibi versus Biden. Faced with the threat of a country that has long pledged to wipe Israel off the face of the map, gaining access to this nuclear weapon which would enable it to carry out its stated ambition, one might understand Netanyahu's reluctance over the United States' potential re-entry into the nuclear deal with Iran. But in the eyes of Jackson DL, the Washington Post deputy editorial page editor, he goes on to say it's Netanyahu's attempt at preventing a devastating war erupting in the Middle East, but this stance constitutes a militant stand against Biden, the president-elect, and his core policy pledges. In his opinion piece published on December 6th, entitled Netanyahu's Reaction to Biden's Victory, he goes on to say it's appalling. He says Israel has a scorched earth tactic, and he describes his reaction, Bibi's reaction to Biden's victory, as having outstripped even that of Vladimir Putin in its malevolent audacity. Again, where is this going? Where is this going? And then we look at the Biden team. And last week we talked about the appointment of Rima Dodin, a Palestinian American Senate staffer, into a senior position of President-elect Joe Biden. It's being celebrated by the Democrats and the Arab American organizations as fulfilling Biden's promise to build a diverse team that, quote, looks like America. This is the Berkeley professor who validated suicide bombings during the First Intifada. Again, cause for concern. Carolyn Glick writes, Joe Biden's been saying that he'll appoint a staff representing diversity, and in a way he has. Some of his appointees are anti-Israel. Others are both anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. Biden announces who will be on his team, who's going to be in the Oval Office as he's announcing this. Sadly, just as I predicted, his team will be anti-Israel in much of its track records and sentiments of the Democratic Party base. The pendulum will swing all the way back. Pro-Israel Trump, anti-Israel Biden. That's again from a well-respected journalist speaker in Israel, Carolyn Glick. And then this sign that was found in Iran, Tehran, simply says, "Thanks, Mossad." Do you realize that this is a remarkable sight? This is found in a freeway overpass hanging over, and it's an Israeli flag with in English written, "Thanks, Mossad." Again, these are the days in which we're living. We've been told of a tremendous revival taking place in the underground church in Iran, and we want to make sure that we don't automatically classify all Iranians as the mullahs, as the crazed Islamist who will stop at nothing but annihilation. Remember to be praying for the Iranians and possibly for an uprising. And then Christmas, new book out. You can take a look at it. I recommend it just by what I've read, but it's a book on Anne Frank. And I'm just thinking about our children, the books that they've been given by their public schools, that this might be a great alternative. So take a look at it and consider purchasing this for your children or grandchildren during the Christmas season. And then I end with I'm missing Israel like crazy, so I had to end with a snapshot of one of my favorite places, a place called Herodian, just outside, just to the southern portion of Israel. And as you can see, they've sort of finished up the little small amphitheater, seating 300. This is truly a remarkable sight, and as I look at this, I once again long to get back to the land. We're going to go whenever things open up. So if you want to go to Israel, we would consider it an honor to have you join us. And so with that, Shabbat Shalom for this upcoming week, and Happy Hanukkah.